Look at you all arriving. Welcome, welcome. So lovely to see so many of you. And we have a virtual person here. Hello, Linda D, who is a virtual avatar. I've never seen that before. That's so cool. Welcome, welcome. Still arriving. So many familiar names and faces. Barbara is just arriving. I am so glad you are all here to celebrate the launch into the world of The Beat of Your Own Drum by Sophie Messager. So Sophie is here, and thank you to everybody who pre-ordered the book. That just means the world to us when people pre-order. It's a great way to support us as a publishing company. And thank you for bearing with us through the trickiness of the US tariffs thing for those of you who are in the US and all the backwards and forwards and ups and downs. But we got your books to you, and that is a serious achievement. So we were so delighted we were able to do that. So we are going to start this evening. We're going to have a little reading. We're going to have a drum meditation. And then we're going to have a few questions and answers between myself and Sophie, some questions and answers from you. So if you'd like to think about what you'd like to ask Sophie or myself, but mainly Sophie, and you can either type them into the chat or you can just pop up your hand when we get to question and answer time, and we will try to fit them all in. I'm getting a strange feedbacky odd noise, and I don't know if it didn't start before you guys entered, so I wonder if it's from somebody. Can I just ask everybody to mute themselves, please, just for now?
You can just click on the participant thing and mute everybody.
Perfect. I'll do that then when I hand over to you. All righty. So I'd like to hand over to Sophie so that she can welcome you and read a little bit from the book.
Hey everyone, thank you for being there. I see some familiar faces of people I've actually met in person and some people I've met online. And so it's really delightful to have you all there. So I'm going to start reading some excerpt from this book, and I hope it will resonate with you. Just a quote before I start reading. The drum is sacred. It carries the heartbeat of Mother Earth. By Mickey Hart. It's early morning in the woodland. The air feels like it's been washed clean overnight. It's got a special lightness that only exists at dawn, before the day's heat settles in. The sunlight dapples through the trees, making beautiful patterns on the mossy ground. Birds are singing their dawn choruses. In the middle of a clearing, a woman stands, ready to drum. She holds the drum's handle in one hand. On its circular wooden frame, a taut, supple skin is stretched. The beater sits in her other hand, ready. As she poses, the air seems to hold its breath in anticipation. With a flick of her wrist, the beater connects with the drum's skin. A boom pierces the silence, sharp and clear. The drum skin ripples from the impact, sending out invisible waves, and suddenly the air is alive. The deep boom rolls through the space, through her body. She feels it in her chest, in her belly and hips, in the soles of her feet. It's not just a sound, it's a force, a presence. She finds a rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. The beater dances across the drum's surface, sometimes striking the edge, sometimes the center, creating different tones. Each beat resonates through the skin, the frame, and her body, as if the drum was speaking directly to her bones. The tempo increases. Her arm moves faster, the beater a blur. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. The rhythm becomes a pulsing energy, flowing from the drum and into the space around her. Her eyes are closed, and she is lost in the rhythm. Her body sways gently. The beater seems to move of its own accord, as if guided by an unseen force. She can no longer hear the birds or see the forest around her. She is no longer playing the drum. She is the drum, the beater, the rhythm. Past and future melt away, leaving only the now of the beat. The beat shifts, slows. Now it's a gentle pulse. Boom, boom, like a heartbeat. Each strike is deliberate, mindful. She feels her breathing deepen. Her muscles relax. The world outside disappears, leaving only this moment, this connection between her, the frame, the skin, and the beater. As the final beat fades, its echo seems to linger in the air. The silence that follows is rich and full, vibrating with otherworldly energy. The nature around her is grateful for this honoring, and even the birds are quietly listening. She is left with a profound sense of peace, of presence, of connection to something ancient and powerful that continues to resonate within her long after the drum has gone quiet. This is what I have been doing weekly for the last 4 years. Well, it's the last 4 years at the time of writing, it's 5 years now. Drumming at dawn in a woodland with 2 other women. This practice has given me more gifts than I can count. A deeper connection to nature, to myself, a sense of sisterhood and belonging. It has fulfilled my longing for more connection to the sacred. But perhaps most importantly, it has given me a growing sense of peace and spaciousness in my heart, something to hold on to in the midst of life's busyness and challenges. What my ever-busy mind could not achieve with meditation, the drum gives me without even having to try. So before I read anything else, it'd be really lovely if any of you wanted to, give a response to that, either in the chat or you feel free to unmute, how any kind of feeling, sensation, feeling of resonance or connection to something you've experienced or something that feels like new to you and you feel really, something is speaking to you about this. I love the ease of without having to try, Rebecca says, yeah. It's exactly...
I'm very grateful that you wrote that piece because I love our books to open with a scene so that you really, because they may be non-fiction books, but we get grabbed by scenes that we really relate to and can feel in our bones. So I asked you to write a scene about drumming, and what you returned to me, I was just like, oh my goodness, it just encapsulates for me the experience of drumming, being in nature, the connection that you receive with other people, to nature, to yourself. And so I was blown away by those words that you wrote. Thank you.
Thank you. And I remember very well when you said to me, and I'm really grateful you asked me to write this, because you said this is writing about an instrument that's a sound instrument, so you need to write more about that, because I'd not quite described. It's quite hard to describe what something sounds like in writing, so
Absolutely.
yeah.
It was necessary. Like, we needed to be drawn into that. We needed to feel it in our bones and remember it in our skin, so that when we're reading with our heads, we're still in our bodies. We're still in that embodied remembering of what a drum beat is, why we want to play, why we're drawn to them. And those words just do it so beautifully.
Thank you. And what's really sweet is that I think that my old self from like 10 to 15 years ago would have read this and felt this longing.
Mm.
And I had I'm collecting pieces of feedback. People are starting to direct feed me through email messages, and it's really lovely. And one of the ones that touched me the most is this woman who said that she feels when is reading the book that it's going to be her in the future.
Oh.
She feels that she's reading, and that's exactly why I've written this. I mean, I've written this because I want to take more women to the drum, and I want to take the women who are already drumming to drum more. And it's really interesting, a theme across the conversation I've had on podcast and thing about the book is there's a lot of women who have a drum but are not actually playing it because they said, I don't feel I'm good enough. I don't think I can drum well enough. And in fact, that leads me very well to this sort of next bit of reading I wanted to do, which is my private drumming practice. In fact, no, I want to jump straight to the next bit, where I said, my experience with the drum has helped me to see the patriarchal mindset as play for what it is, a state of mind where people are squeezed into tiny little boxes and where we are made to feel incompetent and not good enough, and that we cannot possibly do anything unless we are masters at it. Such disempowering bullshit. Yes, there are people who are experts and artists in their crafts, and it's wonderful. But it doesn't mean that those of us who are enjoying something for its own pleasure do not have place within the landscape of a practice or an art. Restricting something to only professionals or masters is akin to saying that only Michelin star chef should be allowed to cook, or that the cooking you do in your own kitchen to feed your family isn't cooking at all. We're all aware that we all have to start somewhere, and some of us will practice something as a hobby, and some of us will go on to become professionals, experts, or may even reach the top of their craft. But to dismiss and devalue the former group is a manifestation of the elitist gatekeeping mentality perpetuated by patriarchal systems. And I just want to share this quick last bit, which is just next to that page. I don't think it's a coincidence that I discovered drumming the year I entered my perimenopause. It is often only when you look back that you can see your own growth and progress. When I look back over the last 11 years, the drum is woven deeply within my journey of self-discovery and healing, as well as that of the many women I have supported. When I look back, I can see that the drum played a role in growing what I call my true self, growing into my power and embracing the whole of me. These days, I no longer carry any discomfort around what is often perceived as a paradox by people. I often get asked, how come you were a scientist and now you do all this weird shit? And now I no longer even feel the need to justify myself, especially if the question is coming from a place of judgment instead of one of curiosity. I often simply reply, because I can.
Would that we all say that more, because I can.
Yeah.
I hope we all carry that out in our hearts today. Just the memory that there needs to be no more justification, no more excuses or apologies. Just, I'm doing it because I can. End of.
And that I read something not long ago that said, oh yeah, singing and dancing is something humans do, like bees make honey. And I was like, and drumming? There need to not be a justification that it's its own answer, it's its own pleasure. And yeah, the other thing I talk endlessly about in the book is that not drumming is not normal. Not dancing, drumming, and singing for humanity and for women is actually, very short in terms of human history and not what people have been doing since humans existed.
So, Sophie, would you like me to ask you some questions now, or would you like to carry on with the meditation?
Please ask me some question. I thought we'll keep the meditation towards a bit later and sort of use it almost like a maybe like not maybe towards the end of the time we have together.
Oh, it would be a lovely way to close. Yeah. So, what was it that led you to write this book? What was the impetus, the final straw, the thing that made the dam inside you break and say, this
Yeah,
has to
and it's
go
really
onto paper?
interesting. I think it's multifaceted. I think it started when I started drumming at birth. So I started drumming at birth in 2019, but the desire to drum at birth had come years before because I started drumming during pregnancy and postpartum ritual. In fact, Rebecca, who is here, is mentioned in the book because it was you who drummed at a Closing the Bone ritual in 2014 at that retreat in North Wales. And I was like, and then I already had a drum from the year before when we had a drum workshop for doulas. But I was listening to you playing the drum during that ritual that made me think, okay, I need to start drumming during that ritual. So that goes back like in like layers and layers of growth. But what was really interesting is that there was a very defining moment in 2023 where I went to sorry, I'm just grabbing a drum. So I made this drum. It's a big drum in the shape of an egg. I went to do a 4-day training with somebody called Melanie Siret, who runs a business called thedrumwoman.com. And it was a 4 days sacred women drum facilitator training and sacred women drum circle facilitator training. And I'd already been running drum circle for a couple of years. I didn't go to that training to do anything for other people. I went to that training because at the time my mental health was in the pits. And I went to that training to spend 4 days on the land because I knew I would have my entire nervous system to settle, to be on the land for 4 days, not having to care for my family, not having to think about anything else, and just being drumming with lots of other women. And then what I had not anticipated is that basically I made this drum, which I'm showing it to you again because it's really special. I made this horse drum, and it's a leader drum. It was designed to lead drum circle, and when I made this drum, it was really, really difficult to make. And when after I finished making it, because it's made of horse hide, which is very thick, and it was very difficult to lace, and I was sweating. It was 30 degrees when we were doing it. And anyway, I finished this drum, and almost immediately lots of things towards the drum started moving after I'd done that training all the way. I had no intention to do anything particular apart from using it to run drum circles. And all sorts of things started to happen, including not only that I started writing the book, but also started to have the idea of writing the book. I didn't really quite start writing the book until 2 or 3 months later, but it was like, and then this scientific journal just contacted me out of the blue and said, we'd like you to write an article about drumming and birth. And I was like, what? You know, it felt so unexpected. So yeah, be careful when you make a drum what you might actually end up doing. And then the other thing I found really interesting is that I'm listening to Elizabeth Gilbert's latest book at the moment, All the Way to the River, which talks about her relationship with a woman who died of cancer and recovery from addiction. And it's quite beautiful but also harrowing read. And at some point she shares that, you know, there's a lot of time where creativity comes from pain. And I was actually reflecting on the fact that both of the books I've written, I wrote the first one 5 years ago, and this one started writing in the middle of 2023. They both started at a time where my mental health was really not in a good place. And I think it's really interesting how it was part of my healing to write the book, but also that I think the seed of the book was born out of creativity from a place of discomfort.
As somebody who's written many, many books from exactly that place, I hear you and I know that place, and I know that writing can help us to stay alive. Writing can help get us through to the next self that we are becoming, that we can't quite reach or grasp, and we can feel our old self dying and falling away. And that feels very scary. But the process of writing helps us to process the process
Mm.
and leads us forward into that new self. We learn what we need to know through the writing of it, and yet we get to share all of that learning that we've done on the path with others through that book. So I'm really curious. Every book is a journey in itself for its author. I'm really curious what you learnt from the writing of the book. I mean, it might be factual stuff, it might be things about yourself, but what did you learn from the writing?
No, it's a really interesting question because there's so many layers.
Mm.
It was really interesting to write my entire journey, to the drum, the chapter about my journey, because it would allow me to look back and see my progress and my growth. The way my brain works is my brain tends to only look at what I'm not doing and tend to think those things that I've done or doing easily. It's like, doesn't matter,
They don't count, yeah.
But I've got ADHD and my brain go, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. And then I've had to, the last 3 years, start writing what I call a TADA list on Friday afternoon, which is the opposite of a to-do list. It's a list of all the shit I've done during that week. Because if I don't do that, I forget I've done lots of stuff. And every time I do that, I go, oh my God, I've done so many things, but my brain thinks I've not done much. So this is tangible. It's like gifts. Oh yeah, you've done this. And so that's one part of that. And then there was a really interesting part is that when I started writing this book, before I contacted you, Lucy, I thought it was going to be just about drumming and bass. And I thought I was going to submit it to the first publisher I'd worked with in 2020. And it was completely by fluke that one of your authors, Bridget Sopples, said to me, oh yeah, Womancraft is doing a Zoom call for prospective authors. It was in September 2023, but I'd barely written anything. It was still in the seed time. And I came to that Zoom call and I was like, I'm going with them. And then because of that, because of Bridget, you happened, and as I started writing, it became very clear that it needed to be a lot wider
Mm.
than just...
Yeah, because the first manuscript I saw was definitely more focused on birth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really has broadened out hugely.
When I attended your call at the beginning of September, and you said you have to submit 4 chapters by the beginning of October, so I wrote 4 chapters in a month.
Wow.
Meet that deadline. That's why they were also not as complete and polished and broad. Do you see what I mean? Because I was like, right, I'm writing about this.
But it shows how much you were holding in your body and your brain ready to birth out onto paper. It was all there, just needed to be put onto paper.
And the other thing I found fascinating is when I started writing this book, I don't remember having quite that same experience with the first book. Because the first book I had to submit, a whole plan, and it was quite clear in my head what I was here. I had no idea some of the stuff I was going to talk about. It just happened as I wrote. Often when I write, I don't really know what I'm going to write. I mean, what I mean is I have an idea, but then it takes all sorts of weird and wonderful shapes. So, for instance, the science chapter, which used to be 1 chapter, and you told me, no, Sophie, it is too big. You're going to have to write it into 2 chapters. Because it was a third of the book. It takes so much. What I loved about writing this part was getting lost in what I call not rabbit holes, but entire warrens. The more I found amazing stuff from people who were doing incredible community projects with the drum around the entire planet, the more I found those people, I found more research, more stories, I talked to so many people. That's one of the things that I've chosen your Womancraft as a publisher, because you talked about the values of a network of women connecting with women, and that has been so true. I've met so many women in the writing of this book, by collecting stories, because the book is full of stories from other women about what the drum does for them, and then in this series of conversation I've been releasing with the launch of the book last week, and is still in the process of being released. You know, I've met so many women, so many amazing women, and been invited on podcasts by people I'd never met before. Like last week, I did the podcast interview, or 2 weeks ago, with this woman who I thought was in the States, but she lives half an hour drive from me. I'd never actually heard of her. She'd never actually heard of me. It was like such delight, of like this massive, like an octopus network of connecting women, more women, and it came through. I know there's a couple of women from the States here today. You know, I saw Barbara's name earlier, and I know Taya. You know, there's a whole community of drumming women in America that I didn't really know much about, and I started having conversation with people, gathering stories, and the humble. What's also touched me the most is the parallel between my own story of the struggle that led me to writing the book, and then the women sharing how the drums been part of them recovering from depression.
Mm.
Yeah, recovering from
What I love about these networks and the circles of women is I think our paths would have crossed one way or the other because I left Cambridge, which is the area that you live in. I left there 20 years ago. But when I left, I was involved in the birth world. And, I could easily have continued in that world. And my husband is a biochemist, so he was working in, academic science. So between all those links, I have a feeling our paths would have crossed one way or the other. So I think that's pretty cool.
yeah,
And one of the things that I am constantly recommending your book for to like people I know rather than just trying to sell a book is the research that you've got in there about neurodivergence and drumming and its impact on health for everybody, but especially for neurodivergent people. And for me, that was one of the most unique slants of your book and just information that I wanted to be helping to push out into the world because as a neurodivergent person myself, and I know you are too, it's so valuable to have resources, research out there, as in positive things that we can do to support our nervous systems, to support our mental health, and creative things that we can do. So yeah, I just wanted to underline how
yeah.
delighted I am with that.
And it's really interesting, you know, because things don't happen in a vacuum or don't happen for no reason. I actually got diagnosed with ADHD in May 2023, which is literally when around the time where the idea of the book started to germinate in my head. So
Mm.
if I'd been diagnosed years before or after, I might not actually have talked about it in the book. I
Mm.
was very much in the discovery part of my diagnosis and what it meant for me, and then this process of like finding out more about, you know, how much it particularly helps.
Mm.
You know, I was also going through perimenopause, so there was all this kind of how it particularly helped neurodivergent women, how it particularly helped women who are going through basically major life transitions,
Mm.
and and it's got this thing about it that the drum, where it's playful and not something you must do, because one of the things I talk extensively about in the book is my deep dislike of the mental health approach, of the Western typical talking therapy mental health approach, or CBT, or techniques that actually have been shown to be harmful to people who are neurodivergent, because often what happens is people get told to do these things and they can't, and then they beat themselves up even more. They're like, get told by a therapist, you must do blah, 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 and then it's like homework. It's like the most boring shit you can get even to do. And drumming is fun. I think that's
Mm.
the key. This is the thing I've noticed for myself when I experience resistance to certain things like journaling or meditation. Drumming is, there's much less resistance to drumming because drumming is playful,
Mm.
you know, and the other beauty is that it can be effective really, really quickly.
I think that's the key, especially for those of us with ADHD brains, is the speed of, you can drum as fast as you want, but also the feedback that your system gets is instantaneous. It's not like something that you've got to do for 2, 3, 4 weeks before you start to see any impact. It's not something you have to do for several hours before you see an impact. You
Yeah.
see it very quickly.
There's a piece of research, if I only quote one piece of research, the piece of research that like blew my mind the most was finding this American therapist whose name escapes me right now. It's in the book, and it's this guy worked with like hypervigilant people with PTSD, like war veterans and people like that. And he was measuring their brainwave, and he could never get them to have alpha wave, which are the waves that are like in the middle. So you've got, gamma all the way to theta waves, to delta waves, but gamma alpha are the one where you're aware, but your nervous system is quite present, but quite relaxed, like light meditation. And he was saying he could not get those people to have those waves, and he was trying meditation and biofeedback and tons of things. Like this guy worked with those people for 11 years. And then somebody said, have you tried drumming? And then he gets them to try 20 minutes of drumming, and half of them had alpha wave. And as he said, not 5 sessions or 10 sessions, 1 session. Half of them had alpha wave, something he'd never been able for them to have in 11 years of work. And I was like,
Yeah.
when you, the reason why I talk so much about 5 minutes of drumming is because when you're feeling really shit, you're not going to have the energy to do something that takes 20 minutes. It needs to be easy, it needs to be quick, it needs to be approachable, it needs to be something that requires very little effort. Yeah. And sorry, one more thing I wanted to say, which, I can't remember if I talk about that in the book, but one of the things that's very clear to me is, I think call it cellular memory or, nervous system resonance, but as humans, we have learned to associate community drumming, especially with feeling safe, with our nervous system feeling safe, right? So, because it's something we've done for millennia. And so when people are hearing drumming or participating in drumming, their nervous system, it's like the research that shows that listening to bird song calms your brain, because bird song means there's no predators. Birds stop singing when there's predators. So it's like there's research that shows that community drumming calms the nervous system, but I think it goes beyond just the direct effect of the drum in that moment. It goes into something that our systems have learned to recognize as associated with rest and digest, with positive social interaction, with, because I find the other thing I find absolutely beautiful when I run drum circles is it makes people feel like we're all together in it. It breaks social barriers, it breaks language barriers, it breaks any kind of creed or religion barriers or anything. It's like people come into that space, they feel a bit nervous because they've never been here before, and by the end of the drum circle everybody feels like they've always known each other, because when people drum together their brainwaves synchronize, and there's this sort of sense of shared joy and participation. Same with singing and dancing, but we're talking about drumming here, and drumming is
Well, it's a shared heartbeat, I guess. It's an external heartbeat that we are all connected to, and is moving through all of our bodies and all of our nervous systems. I'd love to open up the floor to any questions from people who are here. Just a reminder that you can either type it into the chat if you prefer me to read it out for Sophie, or you can raise your hand and ask her a question yourself. And there's no pressure to ask questions. It's just if you came with one on your heart, or something has been raised during this evening session that you wanted to ask more about, please do take the opportunity to. Everyone's sitting quietly, so I'm going to ask you my final question then, which is, what do you hope that people will take away from the book? And I guess a kind of a side question to that is, what feedback have you been getting from the book?
So what I hope is that the book will give women permission's the wrong word, because it feels like nobody needs permission, but it will give women a feeling that they can drum, especially if they were feeling like they wanted to, but they felt they weren't good enough. Do you see what I mean? It's like it will give them like inspiration and excitement, and reading those stories and going, oh yeah, that's me. I could be like that, and that's already happened because the feedback I've been getting from, especially in the podcast I've been recording with a lot of women in the last few months ahead of the launch of the book, which are now being released, is there's been probably 5 or 6 women in those podcasts who have said, I have a drum, but I'm not drumming it because I'm not very good, or I've got imposter syndrome. And I really hope I've made such a strong case about that in the book that I really hope that it A, leads more women to the drum, and B, leads women who feel like they can't to feel like they can. And yeah, doing away with this all good enough bollocks, that's my wish for the book. But it's been utterly fascinating because not only have I, even before writing the book last year, I gave a talk at a women drumming conference, and there were tons of, like, I've lost count of how many women came to see me after the talk to say, I'm going to start doing that 5-minute thing that you're talking about, which I call drum microdosing. But also amongst the women who have recorded me for their podcast, there's not only been women who started to like actively drum, but one of them even organized like a drum busing, like she got someone to come to her neck of the woods so they could all make drums. I was like, this is beyond my expectation. I'm really
Fabulous.
excited about that. Yeah.
So we've got Nikki has just said, where can I find my own private woodland so I can recreate that scene from the book every morning?
So,
I think we're all wondering that.
yeah,
I
so
mean,
it depends.
I certainly have drummed in a friend's garden. She's got a tiny little woodlands at the bottom of her garden. And so we've drummed there. I've also drummed with a friend on a local beach. We could just go down there as the moon is rising and it's quite quiet. There's not many people around. So you don't have to have your own 100-acre estate to be
No.
able to.
I drum in a local nature reserve. Like, this is like 5 minutes from my house near Cambridge, and there are dog walkers and people walking past us. And it's interesting because despite the fact that people can see us, we've almost never been bothered by people. That's happened once or twice that people have come to try and talk to us where we were mid drumming, and also or talk to us after we were done drumming. And I've heard a lot of feedback that some of the, like, sometimes I walk in my village and meet somebody with a dog, and the woman said, "Oh, you're one of the drum people, you're one of the drummers, aren't you?" And the people have come to like it because we do it the same day of the week. We've been doing it for 5 years, so of course people know about it. In fact, in the COVID year, we were doing it twice a week for 2 years. So I don't think you need a lot of space. You need somewhere in nature. I would just say that if you're new to this and you feel a little bit uncomfortable, then finding somewhere more private and quiet might feel safer than being somewhere where you're
I
witnessed.
mean, I've done it in my garden, and my garden is, we're on a housing estate of 20 houses, and we're right next to the village main road. And we've got a hedge, but people can still hear. And you know what? It's not going to kill them.
So,
Linda, I've had my drum for about 10 years and hardly use it. I know, me too. I had one for years and years before I got the courage to use mine. You've encouraged me to drum just 5 minutes a day to start with. There we go, Sophie. Your drum
wonderful.
microdosing is
You know,
taking off.
the 5 minute thing, I'm still using it. I've just started, in fact, inspired by you. You shared that pockets of joy thing, and I thought,
Mm.
I know what I'm going to dedicate my drum microdosing cycle, the next one, which I started last week. I'm going to dedicate to bringing more joy. And so, as
Wonderful.
within a day or two of starting, that's when I started doing that pockets of joy live diary, public diary on Facebook. And it's really interesting how quickly things shifts. The reason why I say the 5 minutes is because if we are like overwhelmed, if we are busy mothers, if we're at a time in our life where we can't see the forest or the trees, pun intended, then doing a practice, in fact, this Rebecca, I remember you talked a lot about micro practice, like when you're a busy woman, mother, business owner, you can't find, if you wait until you get an hour or 2 hours out of your week to do a practice, it ain't gonna happen. So this thing of like going, okay, I'm gonna do 5 minutes. And anybody can do 5 minutes, and I just suggest to put a timer on your phone and just commit to drumming 5 minutes. Because what I found happens to women who start doing that is they often end up drumming for more than 5 minutes, because once they start doing it, they realize it actually feels really good. But the 5 minutes helps you overcome that resistance that you got of going, oh, I just can't be bothered and I haven't got time. Do you see what I mean? It's like,
I practice that with washing up too. I tell myself I'll just do the glasses. They're the easiest thing to wash. And if I can do the glasses, I've got myself there and I will usually do the rest of it. But it's just do the glasses, just 5 minutes of drumming. Alison, we've got a question from you. You can try and unmute yourself. I will try and unmute you. Perfect.
Firstly, congratulations, Sophie.
you.
Amazing. My question is, what was the biggest challenge that you faced whilst writing? And if there was one, how did you overcome it?
So the biggest challenge for me with somebody with ADHD who likes to do things in short bursts is I don't write in nice regular patterns. I write in big bursts and then nothing for a bit. So, I'm really, really grateful. Like I've always said to people, I cannot be one of those people who self-publish, because if I had no outside deadline from a publisher, I would never write the flipping book. I would never finish writing. So it was like, a big batch of writing 4 chapters at once, and then a bit of a lull, and then, periods of like massive writing excitement and going, oh God, how am I going to meet that deadline? And, for me, it always works really well, like as typical ADHD person, when the deadline is looming, then the last 6 weeks before the deadline, I did nothing but writing. So it's really, if the deadline's in 6 months, it might as well not exist. You see what I mean? And also very helpful that Lucy said, I need you to send me like a draft version of the book like 6 months before. So I wrote quite hard for that deadline, and then I had a bit of a lull, and then, yeah. It's really interesting because when I attended a workshop for bus workers who wanted to write, about 6 years ago, before I wrote my first book, I was told by the person running that workshop that I wouldn't be able to write a book like I write my blog. She was wrong. I tend to write from a place of either something's very exciting or something's really pissing me off.
Yeah.
Pissing me off is a really good motivator to writing.
Yeah, I've got a couple of books out of that one too.
Yeah, in fact, I find often more motivated. Like some of the blogs I've written in the past would often be because I heard something on the news that massively pissed me off, and then I would go and literally vomit a blog. So often when I write, what I've noticed is it feels like there's several streams of consciousness coming down all at once, and I can't write fast enough. So I'm often writing and say, also talk about that, writing, and also talk about this, and then tick, 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 and it is all trying to download. And then after, what's really fascinating is when I reread my book, because now it's nearly a year since I finished writing it. We've done some correction, but the main bit of the writing was finished in August last year. I reread stuff I've written and I'm like, I can't remember writing that. Do you get that too, Lucy?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a lovely comment here from Taya saying, I want to thank you, Lucy, for publishing this beautiful compilation by Sophie, and thank you, Sophie, for pulling together within the pages of this book, empowering women who might otherwise feel unable or incapable to drum, but also to include research. So helpful and useful. Thank you very much for that. And from Macy, my younger siblings love the sound of the drum as they have grown up with it. It makes my heart so happy we can bring this medicine to the younger generation.
I tell you, something I want to respond to that is that babies and small children have no problem drumming. They love it. If you hand over a baby or a toddler a drum, they won't ask, is it right? Am I doing it right? They just go bang, 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 bang. And they're actually quite good with rhythm and quite intuitive with it. I encourage women to give, you can get small toy-like drums that are good enough for, so you don't have to worry that if you have a very precious drum that you've made, you might not want to give it to small child in case it gets damaged. But yeah, babies and toddlers absolutely love drums.
Well, thank you everybody for questions and comments. I'm going to draw that bit to a close. I'm just going to say to you that Sophie is on my Creative Magic podcast next Tuesday. And you can get Creative Magic wherever you listen to podcasts, on Spotify or Apple. So there's an hour-long conversation with her there, and it's the extended episode version, which is about 20 minutes longer, is currently up on my Patreon / Lucy H. Pierce, and that's up live now. So really looking forward to sharing you further with the world, Sophie. And then Sophie, around the launch of her book, created a beautiful conversation series of women talking about making noise and embodying their power. So it's started, but it hasn't finished yet. So you can still sign up. And on Sunday, she's going to be sending out an email with all of the speakers so that you won't miss out on any of them. Is there anything else you want to say about that, Sophie, or tell people where
Yeah,
to get it?
I've had some absolutely amazing feedback from what the women are sharing. They received from listening to this conversation. And they were really fascinating to me, those conversations, because they are around the theme of women reclaiming their right to make noise, but each woman came from such a different angle and story. So that's the richness of that, is that hopefully there's one conversation that resonates more with one particular woman, like listening and going, oh yeah, that's me. Stuff that often you don't really know. Like I know that stuff that you often don't really know you have, like being diagnosed with neurodivergence and going, oh yeah, before you get diagnosed, you're like, that's me, that's me, that's me. Like when we had the conversation together, Lucy, when you shared about the fact that you can be successful and have days where you can't get out of bed. And it's not either you're only successful or you're only having days where the bollocks we have around the idea that people who are successful, women who are successful, are only successful like all the time. For me, the reality of how I shared I was writing the book is that my energy works in almost peaks and troughs. So I have days where I do things that make most people go, oh, fuck, how do you do that? And then usually that's followed by some days where I can't do anything at all.
Yeah. And I think that is so powerful for women to hear, because, we've been fed the myth, first of all, of you can only do home and family. That's all women are allowed to do, can do, should do. Then we got the next myth of women should be working just as many hours as men, as well as doing all the house stuff, as well as looking after children, as well as being super skinny and super beautiful and smiling always. And it's like these myths that we get fed, and yet almost nobody can do that. And we shouldn't have to do that. And I feel it's so important for people to know that there are many ways of achieving your dreams. There are many ways of living a life, and we don't have to follow that stupid template that was made for no real human woman. So sorry, rant over.
So there's two conversations with two different women in the series. So they both said that, when women reach perimenopause, they start giving less fucks.
Yeah. There's a lovely piece of tapestry that does the rounds that behold the field in which my fucks are planted. There are no fucks left.
Yeah. So a friend of mine had it as a cushion, like an embroidered cushion.
So where can people sign up for that conversation if they haven't already, that conversation series?
So if you go, for instance, to my Instagram, if we go to my website and you click on support, there's a link to that conversation that will be there until Sunday. And then if you go to my Instagram, so my website is sophiemessager.com and my Instagram is at Sophie_Messager. It's in the link tree thing in my bio.
Fabulous. And again, I just want to thank all of you for being here this evening and for buying the book. And I hope you're enjoying the book. And please, please do share it with your drum circles, your women's groups, your best friends, your neurodivergent folk in your life. Please do share photographs of it on Instagram or Facebook. Help us get it out there into the world, because it's had a really, really great pre-order launch, and we want to keep those ripples going so that it gets into more and more hands of people who need it. So we're going to finish this evening with
And
Sophie.
also, if I can just add something, please, if you love the book, write some review on Amazon or Goodreads or both, because it really helps make more women aware of the existence of the book. There's a lot of reviews.
Well said. So we're going to finish with Sophie drumming, stroke doing a drumming meditation. Feel free to stay, soak it up and enjoy it. Feel free to turn your video off so you can just enjoy it with your eyes closed without feeling watched. Feel free to gradually and gently slip back into your life. There won't be any more talking after this. We're just going to drum you out. Thank you very much for being with us this evening. There's going to be the recording of this is going to go out to everybody who pre-ordered from us. Everybody else, it's going to be on the Womancraft Publishing YouTube channel. So if you want to share it with friends who you think might enjoy the recording, it will be there for you to share. Okay, thank you, Sophie. Thank you, everybody. I look forward to the drumming.
So I'm going to invite you to make yourself comfortable. And if that feels good, gently close your eyes. And take 3 deep breaths, really relaxing your body as you do so. With each breath out, let any tension or stress just melt away. Start to feel where you're sitting or lying, the weight of your body on the chair or wherever you happen to be. And from that place, I invite you to imagine that you're in front of an ancient forest, and you see a path leading in the forest. It's a sacred path that has been walked by many women before you. And you start walking through this path, and you feel the soft ground underneath your feet, and you see the light dappling through the trees, and you can hear the birds, and you can hear a stream babbling nearby. The more you relax, the more you walk this path, the more you feel safe and present. And then you start to hear the sound of a drum up ahead, and you feel called to follow that sound until you arrive into a big circular clearing, which is bathed with gentle light. And in the middle of this clearing there is an enormous ancient tree. And this tree is so big that it would take several people to circle it. And as you approach the roots of the trees, in the roots of the tree you can hear, that's where the sound has been coming from. There is the most beautiful drum you have ever seen. It is the heart of the drum. It has cymbals dancing on its surface and is shimmering with magical light. And you approach it with reverence, and you put your hands on the surface of this drum, and you ask yourself, what do I need right now? And as the drum answers in whichever way is right for you, images, sounds, symbols, knowing, you listen with your whole body as the drum gives you the wisdom that you need. exchange with the drum to a close, the drum is going to give you a gift. It can be an object, a symbol, an image, a feeling, an energy. It is your medicine for the journey ahead. Receive this medicine from the drum, so it enters your entire body, every cell in your body. And thanking the drum for its wisdom, you start to walk out of the clearing back towards the path. And as you walk through the path, you can once again hear the birds and the babbling stream. Feel the soft forest ground under your feet. And as you walk through this path, become more and more present to the here and now, until you find yourself back at the edge of the forest, and back where you're sitting or lying, starting to feel your body, taking a couple of deep breaths in. Bring that medicine from the drum, from the soles of your feet, all the way up to the top of your head. And know that whenever you need to access this medicine, it lives within you now. Medicine of the drum, gift of the drum. And then gently starting to wriggle your fingers and toes. When you're ready, in your own time, slowly open your eyes and come back.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, everybody. Good night.